knows his space bar. All right, welcome on into a live edition of the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Matthew Peterson. On today's live show, we have a lot to discuss as we inch our way closer to the start of NFL free agency. Today is one of the milestones in the NFL offseason. It's the first day that teams can franchise tag players. Now, we're going to talk about what that means. The Broncos do not have a franchise tag candidate, but we'll discuss all of that because it could have some implications for what Denver wants to do in free agency with other guys they could be targeting that they want to franchise tag. Time Man the Buckeye, let me know if my audio is better today. Last week we had some issues, and hopefully they're all resolved, but I'll trust you to be my co-pilot and make sure everything is sounding good on your guys' end. Right off the jump here, nearly 50 guys and girls tuning in, so thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up button if you have not already, and shout out your city for me in the chat. We're going to give everyone 4, 5, 6 or so minutes to click on the notification, join our live show. So while we do that, I figured we can race back and forth and just get to know everyone a little bit better. So where is everyone tuning in from? I know where Time Man the Buckeye is watching from the Buckeye State, but I want to see how far and wide Broncos country stretches because it truly is a country. Free Barbados. We're going to talk about Von Miller, not on today's live show, but I think on tomorrow's episode. So come back for that then. Jody is watching from Roswell, New Mexico. I've got Texas in the house from 3 Wide Racing. Let's see. Free Barbase. The weird thing about this is when the lights come on and the camera's rolling, all of a sudden name pronunciation becomes 10 times more difficult than if I'm just like scrolling on my phone reading stuff out loud. So just can't handle the pressure, I guess. Warren is in Stockton, California. Edmund is in Houston, Texas. Rodney's in LA. Daniel's in the Mile High City. Emmanuel's in Vegas. I'll be in Vegas on Thursday night through Sunday morning. My brother's bachelor party. I'm sure I'll be the first one to have a bachelor party in Vegas, so excited for that. Dave is in Gillette, Wyoming. I covered a high school all-star soccer tournament in Gillette, Wyoming not too many years ago. So fun time in my brief stint in Gillette. Hit up the local B-dubs. Love me some B-dubs. No free ads, though. Cole is in Salt Lake City, Utah, baby. Love to see it. And we have someone watching all the way from Alaska. So continue to shout out your city. One portion of today's episode is going to be about some of the predictions and projections that are coming in from the big wigs of the NFL media world about who's not going to be as good in 2025 as they were in 2024. So let me get your thoughts on this. Will Denver make the playoffs next year? I know, very far out, but I just thought we can get like a rough poll right now, middle of February. Long way to go. A lot's going to change. It will not be the same roster. We don't even know who's going to be on the roster for week 1. But overall, how you feeling at the moment here? Give me a yes or give me a no in the comment section if you believe Denver is going to make the playoffs. After this, we're going to start to get into our first segment on today's live show. But where do you guys stand on this as Noel is tuning in from Tennessee? The Rationale's in Connecticut. Joel is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Craig, we want Von Miller to go out a Bronco, get him back, and draft someone younger to trade off snaps as needed. Time Man the Buckeye believes that Denver will be a frequent flyer in the playoffs. We have producer Moose, who I think is ready to join the show.
Yeah. What up? How are you?
Moose, happy birthday, first and
Thank
foremost.
you. I appreciate that.
It is producer Trace Moustakis' birthday today, so everyone get an HBD going in the chat. Cole thinks yes as well. 68 viewers, 17 likes. Let's show them what's coming up on today's show, and then we're going to talk all about, well, some of the free agency buzz and some targets for Denver, for George and Sean Payton. A lot to go over. So, as always, the latest news and rumors coming your way. Some free agency rumors as Matt Bowen from ESPN went over the top 50 free agents and where he thinks they will all land. Spoiler, he's got some of them going to Denver. And then a mailbag, so an opportunity for you guys to take over the show. Ask me any questions you may have about the Broncos, the NFL, Combine, free agency, draft, anything under the sun. Just use hashtag Broncos somewhere in your question in the chat so that way our software can find it, pull it, and put it on screen. If you'd like, you can super chat as well. That guarantees your question gets on screen, your take, your idea, whatever it may be. Plus, it's an awesome way to support the channel if you enjoy the free content we provide. So greatly appreciate those of you that are generous enough to super chat to the channel. So get your questions in early and often. Use hashtag Broncos in the chat. Let me know what you guys are wondering. So with that being said, let's get ready for our first segment on today's live show. We do have a lot to discuss, as we always do, and I don't want to waste any more of your time. So why not just jump right into the nuts and bolts of our first segment, which is all about some of the free agency news and rumors out there. We have 22 likes, so let's get this show on the road. Alex Smith, you know who Anquan Boldin was. I am familiar with his work. Yes, I am. 3 Wide Racing just did hashtag Broncos in the chat. Include a question somewhere in there, 3 Wide Racing. So that way it can get on screen.
Can I make a request? Can we get to 25 likes before we start our first one? For my birthday, of course.
25 likes for Moose's birthday.
That's 3 away. That's 3 away. That's super easy.
So 2 more likes to go. There we go. Hit that thumbs up button if you have not already. If not, you're telling Moose to go fuck himself on his birthday. And that's not very nice. So don't do that to Moose. It's been an excellent addition to the Chat Sports crew so far. Greatly appreciate all of his help to get you guys as much content as possible. Make sure you turn off the auto loop on intros. That's what did it there. That's why it restarted. I don't know how they got turned on, but all right. We'll find out in 7 seconds, I guess. 30 likes. There we go. Okay, here we go. Let's talk all about some of the free agency chatter out there. Welcome on into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Matthew Peterson. On today's episode, I want to talk about some of the free agency news and rumors out there and how it applies to Denver. So starting off with T. Higgins here, who a lot of people had high up on their wish list for a free agent target for the Broncos. It's either, depending on when you're watching this, about to happen or it's already happened, but the Bengals are planning to franchise tag their wide receiver. So for the sake of clarity, let's just say, even though as I'm filming this right now, I don't believe it's technically happened yet, but it's probably going to happen maybe halfway through this video. So all expectations are Higgins will be tagged, and there's a good chance by the time you're watching this, it's already become official. So the Bengals will be using the non-exclusive franchise tag most likely. What the non-exclusive franchise tag is, it's making up 95% of the franchise tags that you commonly hear. What it is the team is able to tag a player and put him on a 1-year contract, and their salary is either one of 2 things. It is the 5 highest paid players at that position over the last 5 years, and the average of that, or 120% of their salary from last season, whichever one is greater. And it'll likely be the 120%. So T. Higgins is going to make about $26-ish million this upcoming season, although it could be the 5 highest paid. I don't know, but there's not a huge difference between the two. The reason why the Bengals are going to use this non-exclusive franchise tag is that way if a team wants, they can make an offer to T. Higgins, and the Bengals have the option to match that offer, and if they don't match it, that team has to give Cincinnati 2 first-round draft picks. No one's going to give up 2 first-round draft picks for T. Higgins, so this way, it's a little bit cheaper of a franchise tag when it comes to the money amount, but they do kind of run the risk, I wouldn't call it a risk, of losing T, but they're not going to lose him. So the expectation, and at this point, the belief is he will or is already franchise tagged, which means it will now require a tag and trade. We have seen players get franchise tagged before, and then the team is able to hold on to them in free agency, kind of keep them hostage, so they at least get something for the player. You know, the guy's in the last year of his deal, and it's like, you're not going anywhere this year. Trade him now. That way you can get something before he leaves in free agency. Well, this is the other side of the coin. Why trade him midseason when we can hold on to him, tag him, and then teams can make us trade offers for him, and we'll trade his franchise tag to the new team, and they can give him a brand new contract. So if you want T. Higgins, it's not going to just be an open market signing. You'll probably pay similar to what he would have gotten on the open market, but now you have to kick in some draft capital as well. So this is roughly what I think a T. Higgins trade could look like. Second round pick this year for Denver and a fifth round pick next year. It's not nothing, but it's not, extremely expensive, but it's still a good investment. I think you could compare T. Higgins' value right now to Stephon Diggs when he got dealt a little bit older from the Bills to the Texans. The Bills got a second round pick from Houston that the Texans got from Minnesota. And they also got 2 late day 3 draft picks. But Higgins being a little bit younger, I don't think as good as Stephon Diggs though, might be a little bit more expensive. But I've been very open about this when we talk about Higgins on the show. I feel dumb for not saying absolutely you should sign T. Higgins no matter what. It's a no-brainer. But I just can't quite seem to get past the lack of availability over the past 2 seasons is concerning to me. He's missed 10 total games, and you're going to pay him to be a top 10 highest paid receiver in football. And I don't think this is like Randy Gregory 2.0 because the writing was on the wall with Randy Gregory for all the time he missed. But I do think you have to take a good hard look at someone who's missed 5 games in 2 straight seasons. 5, 10, 15. We're talking about almost a third of the games. That's a lot of production you're missing out on for a lot of money you are investing in. So I don't want to say I'm against the idea of signing Higgins because when he is on the field, he's incredible. And he's been a number 2 this whole time. So imagine what he could do with more snaps and more targets and more of everything. But you also have to be very confident that he's not going to miss any time. And his recent track record would indicate otherwise. Ultimately, I think Higgins is going to stay in Cincinnati. The Bengals, I don't think they're doing Higgins, I don't say justice because he's still making a lot of money. Worst case scenario, you make $26 million this year. Let me get my tiny violin out for you. But I wonder if this is kind of a bad move to send to other players. Like, here's how we operate. We're penny pinchers. We don't want to give anyone long-term contracts. So we'll keep them hostage. And teams can franchise tag players 3 straight seasons. Is that not what the Redskins did with Kirk Cousins? They did 2 seasons. I don't know if they did 3 seasons. But, yeah, I think ultimately Higgins is going to stay in Cincinnati with this franchise tag in place. But maybe Denver gives him an offer they can't refuse. If you were George and Sean Payton, would you do this deal right here? If it was in front of you and you had a deal or no deal button, are you taking the deal? I would not take the deal. I'd rather keep the picks and keep my money. While I do like Higgins, I don't think he's worth the money and the draft picks required to give up for him at this point here. So, no deal for me, which I know is not the fun thing to do on Deal or No Deal, but it usually makes you more money, so I'm not interested. Now, next up on the show today, I want to talk about some of the predictions floating out there for the Broncos in 2025, because we are starting to hit that, I don't want to say dry portion of the offseason, because there's some trade rumors out there. Combine's not far away, then free agency, then the draft. The dry part really is like June or July, but I have seen some articles about hot takes for next year, and the Broncos have come up with them in a handful of times, but not in great ways. And I want to react to that and kind of break it all down with you guys. But really quickly, we are trying to reach 33,000 subscribers here on the channel. We are less than 200 subs away. So if you are not subscribed yet, please go ahead and click the button down below. It would go a long way to improve and boost the channel so we can get more studio space, get more content out for you guys at home. So please go ahead and subscribe. It's completely free. So if you don't like it, you can always unsubscribe later on. CBS Sports came out with this article, the top 5 regression candidates for 2025. They've got the Vikings, the Commanders, the Steelers, the Broncos. I don't really know why the Colts are on there. If they had a losing record, can they really be a regression candidate? But sure, I guess they might finish with fewer than 8 wins. But here's another piece that came out from ESPN as this begins to snowball. Seth Walder wrote, the simplest way to pick a regression candidate is to look for teams with elite defenses and mediocre offenses. It's just so hard to repeat defensive success year after year. And Denver ranked only 15th in EPA per play on offense. Yes, Bo Nix might progress in year 2, but he also might not. You want to hear something crazy? They're not entirely wrong for this line of thinking. Do I think they are going to take a massive step back? No. But someone has to. I mean, just from a number standpoint, I went back to when the NFL expanded to a 7-team playoff, and I counted from one year to the next how many teams missed the playoffs after making it the previous year. 41% of teams do not make the playoffs the year after making the playoffs. It's not quite 50-50, but it's not far off from it. So when you look over the AFC playoff picture, you've got 7 teams here. The math tells me 3 of them are probably going to miss the playoffs. And I don't think it's going to be the Chiefs, the Bills, or the Ravens. So I'm looking at 4 other teams, and you got to pick 3 out of those 4 based on the math. I mean, a combination of the AFC and NFC. So not just 3 AFC teams. I should have made that more clear. You look at the NFC as well, and you're going to have about 6 teams that miss it. 5 to 6 teams from a total of the AFC and NFC. So there's always a lot of parity in the NFL. So when someone says the Broncos are a regression candidate, they're not insane for saying that. They were the 7 seed. If you're starting with who are some candidates that could miss the playoffs after making it last year, the obvious place to start is the team that, I would say barely squeaked in, but was the last one into the playoffs. So yeah, I feel like it's our moral obligation and fans should be irate and protest and make a bunch of burners and come for these guys on Twitter when they come after your team. But the math says 41% of teams are not going to make the playoffs the next year. And the first place to start is let's go from the bottom and work our way to the top for who might fall off. Now, I've got some good facts and numbers on this in just a second, but this Bo Nix t-shirt jersey is currently on sale at Fanatics. They've been going through a bunch of sales. They kind of come and go, but I don't want you guys to miss out. So go to chatsports.com/Knicks shirt. I love a jersey because it's not as expensive as your jersey, but you still get to rep your favorite team and your favorite players. So this link is in the comments and description of today's video. If you want to support the channel and you're thinking of getting a shirt anyway, go use chatsports.com/Knicks shirt. So let's talk about those 41% of teams and how they eventually missed the playoffs here. There are 11 teams that just flat out regressed. And these 11 teams make up 44% of the teams that did not make the playoffs after making it the previous year. I know we're kind of getting into a deep math web, but basically what I'm saying is of the 41% of teams that missed the playoffs after making it, why did they miss the playoffs? Well, you can see like the Browns, they just regressed, right? They were good in 2023, they were good in 2024, not good in 2025. This is, by the way, the year of them missing the playoffs. So good in 2023, not good in 2024. The Jags, the Chargers, the Giants, they just regressed after making the playoffs in 2022. Same goes for Seattle. The Packers made it, and then the next year, in Aaron Rodgers' final year in Green Bay, he goes 8-9 as a starter. So under half of the teams that barely miss on the playoffs, I'm getting myself in a word twister here, because they just suck. That's really the short answer. Now, another piece of the pie is quarterback injuries. 43% of the teams that do not return to the playoffs, that's because their quarterback got injured. Tua, Dak went down this year. Burrow went down for the Bengals. The Vikings lost. But Bo Nix does give me Iron Man vibes. Although there are plenty of quarterbacks on those teams that also kind of give, Kirk Cousins had never missed any time with an injury until he tore his Achilles. So that's another big piece of why do teams miss the playoffs after missing it. A smaller fraction of the piece is they got a new quarterback. The Steelers went with Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. They were not on the 2021 Steelers that made the playoffs. The Colts had Phillip Rivers retire, and they put their faith in Carson Wentz. Bad idea. The Saints had Drew Brees retire, and they rolled with Jameis Winston, who also got injured. So you could kind of put the Saints on 2 of these sheets right here. But I know that's a lot of numbers, and maybe I lost some of you halfway through the explanation of it. But the point I'm trying to make here, 41% of teams do not make the playoffs after making it the previous year. And of those 41%, about 43% of them were because their quarterback got injured. And I feel comfortable saying Bo Nix, well, it's very early in his career, but based on his college career, he's not a quarterback-prone type of guy. So I'm not going to read too much into Denver's defense was really good and it carried them. Denver's defense was good this year, but it wasn't all that good when they played some tough competition. So they clearly showed some weaknesses, and the offense was able to pick up the slack as well. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not here to say whether or not they for sure will or for sure won't, but I don't think it's an outlandish idea to suggest that Denver could regress, since 41% of teams do regress, but the makeup of that 41% of teams doesn't really scream Denver, since they're not getting a new quarterback, and knock on wood, their quarterback doesn't get injured too often in a very small sample size. I know that was kind of a roller coaster, and I felt like I lost myself halfway through it, but I still felt it was fun and informative to share what makes up a regression candidate. So name a random Broncos quarterback for me. This is how we're going to end the video today. Scroll on down to the comment section. Name a random Broncos QB. I've got my quarterback in mind. I'm going to count down from 3, and let's see if we say the same quarterback. I got a good one. 3, 2, 1. Paxton Lynch. Not a good quarterback, but still a random Broncos quarterback. Give me the former first-round pick, Paxton Lynch. Let me know if you said the same name down below in the comments. That was a trip. There's a lot of numbers. Percentages of percentages. I bit off more than I could chew. But I do like those segments of a video because I feel like the audience, although I myself got lost at one point, at least comes away learning, like, why does a team miss the playoffs after making it the previous year? Like, what's the makeup of that type of profile?
Well, and that's the great thing about the NFL is that there is such a parity with so many different factors, right? Teams can get instantly worse if free agents decide to leave. If there's a trade, they could have a bad draft. I mean, look at the Cowboys. 3 straight years, 12-5, and then all of a sudden, in the pooper.
Yep. Jay Cutler is a popular name right now in the chat for name a random QB. Jake the Snake as well. I thought I could catch some people off guard that's like, he wouldn't say Paxton Lynch. He didn't play enough, but peekaboo, I got you. All right, next up on the show, I want to talk about some free agent targets now for Denver because ESPN linked 3 guys to the Mile High City. So we'll unpack whether or not they are good fits, how realistic they are, what it could cost, all that stuff. Because the way the NFL offseason works is, if you miss the playoffs, the next day it's all about whether or not anyone's going to get fired. Because if you miss the playoffs, there's a good chance your coach could be on the hot seat. And if he does get fired, then you begin the replacement search. If he doesn't get fired, then you begin the draft. At least it's a weird cycle because you immediately get hit with like the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl. And you start to think about the draft because the draft's the most exciting part, at least in my opinion, of the offseason. But then after like draft overload for a month or so, after the Super Bowl ends, then the conversation turns to free agency, which it kind of should from the start, since free agency is the first thing in the offseason. So we go draft, free agency, draft. And now we're in that free agency sweet spot, talking about guys that the Broncos could be targeting. Are we ready to jump into segment number 2? I wouldn't do the intros because I don't think something's working there. You figured it out? Okay. Take 2 on the intro. So here we go. Ready for liftoff in 3, 2, 1, go. Welcome on into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Matthew Peterson. On today's episode, I want to discuss 3 free agents that ESPN linked to the Broncos, talk about whether or not they'd be a good fit, how realistic they are for George Payton and Sean Payton. So, with that, we're going to dive into these 3 candidates. But first things first, we are closing in. Here, we'll start over. That's all right. Okay, take two. Sorry about that, everyone. When we're live, you get to see the mistakes and how the sausage is made. So, take 2. Alex Smith, it was Moss's first year as a starter. He's still who's slandering Riley Moss right now? Oh, you don't think Riley? Come on. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was very skeptical of Riley Moss going into this year based on us seeing virtually nothing from him his first year. But kudos to the coaching staff. They saw him in practice, and they saw enough to believe in him. So I'm not going to stand for slandering a CB2 on a rookie deal who's basically entering his second year in the league since he barely played his first season. Second year of meaningful, snaps and games played. Okay, we ready to roll? Here we go. Take 2 on our second segment, starting in 3, 2, 1. Welcome on into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. On today's episode, I want to talk about this ESPN article that linked not 1, not 2, but 3 not 1, not 2, but 3 free agents to the Broncos in NFL free agency. Let's just start over. We're already shit in the bed here. So what's try number 3? That's the first on a live show. So you guys are really not getting your money's worth. My fault on this one. All right, so a couple of mulligans all around. We're going to get it right this time. Welcome on into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. On today's episode, I want to discuss 3 free agents that ESPN linked to Denver and talk about whether or not they'd be a good fit for the Broncos, how realistic it is, and ultimately what it would cost. So the first free agent that was connected to the Broncos by an ESPN reporter, Bill Barnwell, is wide receiver Keenan Allen, our old AFC West foe from the Chargers, who just wrapped up his first season with the Bears, is a free agent, and I think surface level, this does make some level of sense, right? Why did the Bears bring in Keenan Allen to begin with? They wanted to give Caleb Williams a veteran receiver to work with. Now, the production wasn't terrific for Keenan, but they also had to fire their offensive coordinator halfway through the year because he reportedly wasn't even watching film with Caleb Williams. It was that big of a disaster. They had Keenan Allen in a spot where they wanted him going on deep go routes at the age of 33. So shame on the Bears for not using Allen correctly, but I still think he can play and start in the NFL. This is what Barnwell wrote specifically, though. There are competitive teams where his ability to feel out holes in zone coverage would be valuable as a second or third wideout, with the Broncos coming to mind as a logical landing spot. And I agree with Bill here. I could get behind this signing because there is a lot of truth to what he is saying. Is he going to be a number 1? No, not at this point. But could he be maybe more of what you were hoping to get out of a tight end that Denver didn't this past year, a bit of a safety blanket over the middle of the field to move the sticks? Yeah, I think Allen's capable of doing that. I think he's at the stage of his career where he's probably not going to beat you with his incredible blazing speed, but what he is going to beat you with is his ability to start reading the defense as he gets out of his break and see where the soft spot is, find it, sit in it, and let the ball come to him and move the chains. So I am open to the idea of adding Allen to this wide receiver room. It wouldn't be very expensive, and I don't think it's going to stunt the growth of any of the young receivers. Whereas if you go out and acquire T. Higgins, that's someone who you immediately put at the front of the line. Whereas Allen got Cortland Sutton still, Devon Vele, Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, those last 4 guys can kind of rotate in, and they can all be used when their skill set is called on. So I like the idea of Denver pursuing Keenan Allen. I think there is a lot of pros behind it. Also, you look at the breakout Marvin Mims had at the end of 2024. He's your go guy, right? He is your true not X-receiver, but a run down the sideline and just run past everyone. Use your speed to your best ability. That's not Keenan's game anymore. So this would help kind of form a well-rounded wide receiver room for the Broncos. I think you could get him on a 1-year, $10 million contract. Maybe it's going to end up being a little bit more because it's not a very good receiver draft class, which is good news for all free agent wide receivers. But I'd play ball with a 1-year contract to help Bo Nix out here in year number 2. So I'm open to the idea of signing Allen. Who knows if Keenan, for how long he played with the Chargers, has any interest in playing with the Broncos? I think at this point of his career, he might be a little picky about where he wants to go play and live, and it might just be like, I either want to go back to LA, play for the Chargers, or play for the Rams, or stay in Chicago because I'm here right now and I don't want to pack up and move to a third new city. So that's definitely something that factors into veteran players' decision-making processes, but the Broncos should at least kick the tires on this one. So would you sign Keenan Allen if you were in charge? If I was told, hey, the Broncos just signed Keenan Allen, my reaction's not going to be bad move right there. It's probably not going to cost you a lot of money. I don't see a lot of downside to it. I see some upside for Bo Nix's development. Second free agent target, Nick Bolton. So speaking of AFC West foes, the Chiefs linebacker. He was listed on an ESPN Top 50 free agent article with the Broncos being labeled as a best destination. So let's get a little bit familiar. Take the name tag off really quickly, Moose, with Mr. Nick Bolton. So coming off last year, that's not me. 106 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and Pro Football Focus ranked him kind of right in the middle of all inside linebackers. He's got some good playmaking abilities to his game. You can see the pass rush upside. He's probably not the best cover linebacker in the NFL, and listen, that's becoming an increasingly important trait in a modern defense because of how many 3 wide receiver sets we see. The linebacker has more coverage duties today than they did 10, 15 years ago. But there is a lot of smoke right now around the Broncos going after an inside linebacker. Starting with Sean Payton himself saying, we want an inside linebacker. And Zach Bond's name comes up a bunch. Now I've got Nick Bolton's name coming up a bunch. It's starting to snowball a little bit here. So it may not be Nick Bolton, but I think an inside linebacker signing is coming. Cody Barton's a free agent. Singleton's coming off a torn ACL. He's 32 years old. There are some cap savings to be had by moving on from him. Don't rule out Denver just blowing up the inside linebacker position and going after that spot in free agency and then again in the draft and maybe a cheap second free agent signing as well. My prediction right now, mid-February, the biggest contract the Broncos give out in free agency is going to go to an inside linebacker. I don't think they're going to spend big at wide receiver. I don't think they're going to spend big at running back or tight end. And so I think they're going to try and lure one of these top inside linebackers, Bond or Bolton, someone to that magnitude, and it's probably going to cost you between $35 to $40 million. So you want a hot take right now? Biggest total contract given out will be going to an inside linebacker. Third and final free agent target, running back Aaron Jones. We've talked about Jones before. He continues to come up when we look at running back targets for the Broncos. Denver was listed as a best destination for him on this ESPN Top 50 free agents article. Here's what Matt Bowen wrote. Jones has the traits that Denver coach Sean Payton wants at running back. He's a slasher in the run game and has the dual threat traits to catch the ball out of the backfield and produce on screens. I don't disagree with anything Matt's saying right here. When you look at Jones's makeup and his profile as a player, he does check the box of, I wouldn't say that joker, but like not far off of it. He's got good receiving abilities. We saw that a lot in Green Bay. The only concern is he's on the wrong side of 30, and do teams feel like, hey, his best days are behind him? Don't reward him for what he did with another team, and you won't get that same production on your team, right? Don't pay him for what he did with Minnesota. Pay him for what you think he can do in Denver. And if you don't think he can replicate those types of numbers next year, then it's probably best to keep your money in your pockets. But Denver's going to add a running back. I expect them to go out and sign a running back in free agency, probably come back at the draft as well. Javonte Williams is not coming back. I think they were hopeful that Jaleel McLaughlin could take a bigger step forward in year 2. He improved in pass protection, but from a receiving ability, it wasn't quite there. There's Tyler Bidet, who looked good for a little bit, but then we didn't see him for a long stretch. And then rookie Audric Estime was just a rookie, so I won't make any big conclusions on him. I think we're going to see, like I said, though, a veteran running back signing, maybe like Aaron Jones, along with a rookie in the first 2 days of the draft added to this running back room. And they're going to completely gut or close to it and remodel this running back room. Might be the last time we see highlight reel Jaleel, which is a bummer because It's been great to see his path as a UDFA and getting some meaningful, not just snaps, but a large role on this Broncos offense the past 2 seasons, but just didn't quite take that step forward in year 2 that they were hoping for. I mean, there are people saying, like, cut Javonte before the season because McLaughlin's going to be such a big piece of this offense. And that never really took off. So Estime as a rookie is probably going to be safe for the second year on the team. And maybe they roll with 4 running backs, but it may very well be Estime, a new rookie, and a veteran like Aaron Jones. To wrap up today's episode, I want you guys to name a Broncos player who scored a touchdown in 2024. I'm going to kind of box you guys in a little bit here, so think about it for a second. I've got my name already. I like my name too. Oh, I keep stepping on my cord, sorry. 3, 2, 1. Nate Atkins. You might have thought, no way he's thinking of the backup tight end. Oh, no. I'm all over Nate Atkins. So let me know who you said down below and if you also said Nate Atkins as a touchdown recipient this past year for the Broncos. Well, we got through it. It only took like 3 tries, but it's all right, boys and girls. Yeah, I don't know either. Okay. I think I got my fellow Matthew on Nate Atkins as well. Bo Nix is a good one because you probably didn't think he not only caught a touchdown, he rushed for touchdowns. So that's a very real possibility. Scored the first touchdown. Was it not the first touchdown in the Ravens game, or did it tie the score? And then it went downhill after that. They just got their teeth pushed in. Michael Bird's a good one too. AFX is in the chat. How you doing, man? Thank you for tuning in as always. Over 100 people watching, so I know you guys have some questions. Our mailbag is next up on the docket. Use hashtag Broncos or Super Chat. If you Super Chat, you guarantee your question on screen. You'd also be the first Super Chat of the day, so really appreciate the MVP, which would be the first and only Super Chatter today for going above and beyond to support the channel. Or if you can't Super Chat, just use hashtag Broncos. Get those questions in. I can tell we need some more questions, so I'm going to start calling out people by name here. I want a question from Aiden. I want a question from Ramon as well. I'm going to put you two on the hot seat right now. You have to use hashtag Broncos, though, somewhere in your question. How many questions do we have, roughly, Mr. Moustakis?
As of right now, we look like we have about 6. So we would need, let's get a couple more. Let's get 2 or 3 more.
Let's pump those numbers up. Come on now. Aiden already sent a question. All right, Aiden, you're off the hot seat then. I'm going to place the hot seat on Bo Lever. Bo Lever, I want a question from you. I love just playing popcorn style here, just calling out people by name. I'm like the mean substitute teacher. It's like, that's not how usually we do reading time. Well, too bad. So get those questions in. Hashtag Broncos or Super Chat if you enjoy the free content and want to guarantee it gets on screen for everyone watching to see. Matthew just keeps spamming people that scored scored touchdowns last year. So that's where his head is at the moment. Ramon, I like your perfect offseason. Just copy and paste that with the hashtag Broncos, and we can discuss it on the show. You know, it could be an idea as well. It doesn't have to be like a true AP question. It can be a take. AFX with a $2. What? AFX? What happened? Well, why don't you like me anymore? That one digs. That's a fucking knife to the heart right there, AFX. Been one of the longest, most loyal viewers out there. Bo Lever. That's a good question, Bo Lever. It's a good question. We'll get AFX's Super Chat on screen. All Super Chats get on screen. I don't know what I did to deserve this. I don't like you, Matt. Eat the breadsticks. AFX, I haven't had a carb in 3 weeks, buddy. It is wedding diet season over here. I'm eating like rabbit food. Having cucumbers and lettuce for lunch and dinner. It's awful. So yes, I've not had a breadstick. I've not had anything good in like 3 weeks. So breadsticks, unfortunately, have fallen off a little bit. We got SH with a question. Okay, Ashton, I like your comment. Just include hashtag Broncos so we can get on screen and we can discuss that. Are we ready to probably get it started?
We need one more person to have hashtag Broncos in there. One more person to have hashtag Broncos in their question, because if you don't put the hashtag Broncos, it doesn't get to go on screen from our technology. So that's how it loads into the system, and that's how we can get your questions on screen and give you guys the best Broncos content that you all crave. So make sure you use hashtag Broncos, whether that be uppercase, lowercase, or in full caps. It just has to be hashtag Broncos.
Matthew, I am. That's kind of the whole diet, is no carbs, no sugar, lots of protein, lots of veggies. There we go. I like this one from Costin. Is that how you pronounce your name? Costin? Yeah, we can lead off with that one right there. Yeah, it's a good one. That's okay. We'll figure it out later. Are we ready to rumble? Welcome on into a mailbag edition of the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Our first question today coming in from Chiefs legend Alex Smith. What's your thoughts on re-signing DJ Jones? DJ Jones was like a big cap casualty candidate 2 off seasons ago. Denver keeps him, and then he has, I would say, a pretty solid 2024 year. I think he did a great job of stuffing the run and playing his role, which is eat up blockers and allow everyone else to get to the quarterback. And that's exactly what happened. So I would not be opposed if Denver and Jones find a way to bring back Jones. However, this is a loaded interior defensive line class. So if, let's say, you plan on spending $5 million for DJ Jones, you could take that $5 million, allocate it elsewhere, and then use one of your first, second, or third round draft picks on a defensive tackle and still get good production from your interior defensive line and maybe better production elsewhere because you saved money by not re-signing Jones. But I would not be opposed to the idea because he did play some really good ball last season. Emmanuel, you're next up. What would be your ideal offseason game plan, including cuts, trades, the draft, and free agency? All right, Emmanuel. Got a lot going on here. Let's go kind of in the order you put it out there. Cuts. Probably like PJ Locke. I don't think they're going to cut Ben Powers. You could save some money, but that's a post-June 1 release. Do you really need $12 million after June 1st? I don't think so. So I would say move on from PJ Locke after a disappointing first year as a starter in 2024. Trades, I don't think it's a great idea for Denver to trade for a running back. You know, Alvin Kamara could be available, Travis Etienne. Just the more I think about it, it's a really good running back draft class. So whatever pick you're going to use to get one of those veterans, why not just get a rookie who's going to be cheaper and on your team for longer and maybe even better? So from a trading perspective, I can't think of anyone who's an obvious candidate to leave the Broncos. And while Sean Payton does like to wheel and deal a little bit, maybe he makes a trade for, I'd say, a receiver, but I don't think they're going to make a big splash at receiver. So I don't forecast any big blockbuster trades of, that magnitude. The draft, if it were up to me, it's Ashton Genty at 20. Now, who knows if he'll really be there at 20, but if this was an ideal offseason, it's Genty. My backup would be Tyler Warren. My plan C would be like Walter Nolan or Colston Loveland. And then free agency, sign Zach Bond, put him at the middle linebacker position. You pair him with Alex Singleton if you hold on to him. That's going to be a really good middle of your defense right there. So, Emmanuel, there's not a whole lot of big splashy moves, but I don't think the Broncos are going to make big splashy moves this offseason. Bo Lever, if the Broncos go after Cam Skattebo, what round would it be in? I think Skattebo is probably going to take a little bit of a hit when the combine gets here because he's not the most physically gifted running back when it comes to speed. And that's going to turn some people off. I was talking to my coworker about this. Every single team should send one scout after the college football season is over to live on a Caribbean island and not watch any of the pre-draft process. No combine, no Senior Bowl, no Shrine Bowl, none of it. And then bring that person back right before the draft as if they were frozen in time after the regular season ended, and ask them for their big board of the best college players. Because oftentimes we let the pre-draft process just take over us because we get bored waiting for April, and we forget about the games that were played and make all of our evaluations up of, well, look what he weighed in at. Look at his hand size. Look at the way he played in September. That's more important to me. And Cam Skattebo was really good this season. So what round? I think he might take a hit because of the combine, but I'd say he's probably like a round 3 guy at the earliest. Dr. Carnage, do we get Talanoa Hufanga? I bet the Niners bring him back. He's missed some time the last 2 years, so he's probably not going to get a big payday in free agency. And if that means the Niners aren't going to get priced out of re-signing him, I think they would like to bring back their former All-Pro safety. Right? It'd be one thing if he was healthy and just, hey, this other team's offering me $10 million more, I got to take it. But if he's not getting a huge payday in free agency, I don't see why the Niners can't afford to bring him back. I would not be opposed to it. I like the idea for sure, but I think he'll probably stay in San Francisco. Show me the Elway. Any chance the Broncos trade for Jermaine Pratt after his trade request? The Bengals inside linebacker did request a trade last week, like every good Bengals player, because he's on a team that's not going to pay him. They have, I wouldn't say too many mouths to feed. They just don't have rich enough owners to feed those mouths. But Pratt has been quietly one of the better inside linebackers in football. I don't think that's like a hot take, but usually when you think of inside linebackers, it's Roquan Smith, it's Fred Warner, it's Matt Milano, right? Jermaine Pratt, while he's not in that same upper echelon, he ain't too far behind. He makes some really big plays for them when it comes to generating takeaways, when it comes to pressuring the quarterback. I like a lot about his game. I love the availability. Has not missed a game the past 2 seasons. I would not be opposed to bringing on Pratt. Of course, I don't want it to cost too much in a trade, and the Bengals might just be happy to get his contract off their books and get something out of him. But I don't suspect Denver wants to give up meaningful draft capital for an older inside linebacker when they could maybe just sign a better one in free agency and not lose any picks or turn to the draft. But I'm not against the idea of trading for Pratt. Let me know what your thoughts are on this conversation is, though. Should the Broncos trade for Jermaine Pratt? Let me know in the comment section below if you want Denver to trade for Pratt. Scroll on down, give me a yes or give me a no. Matthew Morgan. Best version on free agency. All right. If we're talking, fun, exciting moves, it'd have to be some type of acquisition of like T. Higgins or Chris Godwin. I don't think either one's going to happen. So, take it a step below that. Zach Bond reunites with Darren Rizzi and Sean Payton after his breakout year in Philadelphia. Denver gives him $11, $12 million a season. I think that could be in his wheelhouse right there. I'm guessing if you ask Sean Payton, who's your number one guy, Bond's got to be in his top 3 right there. Matthew, thank you so much for your question. Appreciate it. Another one for Mr. Morgan here. Restructure Ben Powers and draft interior offensive line early. The thing with restructures is you are lowering their cap hit for that season and pushing more money, more cap hits later on. If you're restructuring his deal just to draft his replacement, you've now made it more difficult to move on from him after 2025. So I would not be a fan of restructuring a player's contract that you foresee cutting, although I think he'll be a free agent. No, he might have one more year left on beyond. Yeah, I think he has one more year beyond this season. I don't like the idea of restructuring a contract for a player you plan to cut in 12 months. I think you're just making it a little bit more difficult for you the next offseason. So I'm okay with drafting interior offensive line, although it's not a great interior offensive line draft class. There's no incredible center, which would have been nice for Denver because I think you could do better than Wattenberg, but still, I'm sure you can find some good players. But I'm okay with the second part, not so much the first part. Aiden, would you rather trade a third-round pick for Deebo Samuel for a win-now kind of trade, or draft Tej Johnson with that pick, deal with the rookie struggles like Troy, and plan for the future? I don't think Denver should think 2025 is a win-now mode, but I also don't think Deebo should be looked at as like a one-year rental, get the last little bit of juice out of him. The guy's not even 30 yet. He does play a physical brand of football, so those hits definitely add up throughout the course of his career, and it's caused him to miss time. The thing with Tej Johnson is he's tiny. Remember Tank Dell, like skin and bones? He's 10 pounds lighter than Tank Dell. And I said this before on a show. Tank Dell has suffered 2 major injuries in his first 2 seasons. He may very well miss all of 2025. At 154 pounds, when you're tackled over the middle by a 240-pound linebacker, that's not necessarily a new thing to Tej Johnson, but it might be a different wake-up call in the NFL. And I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. I'm open to be laughed at and ridiculed in a few years if Johnson's incredible. And I usually don't like making analysis on players based on their size, their height, their weight. If they played super well in college, who gives a shit? They found a way to overcome that clearly. But a $154 in the next league, yikes. So I'd probably go with the Deebo route, although I don't think it'll cost you a third. Before we get on to the rest of the questions, check out this Bo Nix jersey. If you want to get some more Broncos gear in your closet, go to chatsports.com/Knicks shirt. It's a great way to get your favorite player on your back without also spending an arm and a leg for a jersey. That's why I love jerseys. Kind of has all the pros of a jersey without the cost. So if you want to get some more Broncos gear, go to chatsports.com/Knicks shirt. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. SH20, if you could pick one free agent player that the Broncos are guaranteed to get, who would it be? Ooh, good question. There's no running back who I'm like, that's the guy I want to play this card for. There's no tight end also. And those are 2 of your biggest needs. So I'm going through the other needs right now, and I'm thinking linebacker. I'm thinking Zach Bond. I mean, there are better players that are going to be free agents, but just not at a huge position of need for Denver. So I'm going to go with Zach Bond. I think Bond would probably be like I'm going to play this card. I've really warmed up to the idea. I think he'd be a fantastic addition to the middle of the defense. And now you'd have pillars. You'd have cornerstones at all 3 spots, right? You've got Cooper and Benito up front. You've got Bond in the middle. You've got PS2 in the secondary. Every single level, it's like going through from easy to hard to difficulty when it comes to penetrating this defense. Not that the easiest part's the front, but like the way they've improved this roster and defensively, I really think adding to the interior of the linebacking core would be an excellent addition. Before we sign off, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Scroll on down, click that sub button, like the video. But of course, we have to name a random player. Let's just do name any random Broncos player. I've kind of created some parameters recently to keep things spicy, but let's just go with name a generic random Broncos player. I've got mine already. I'm going to count down. 3, 2, 1. No Sean Moreno. 10. We're kind of closing on that being 15 years ago, which is crazy to say out loud. But I'm going to go with no Sean Moreno. Let me know if you said the same name down below. We had some great questions there. So appreciate everyone for asking questions. Always love to get some good questions to, let you guys drive the ship a little bit here. So thank you. Ashton, you put a space in between the hashtag and the Broncos, so it will not poll, but I will just read it out loud for you guys here. Who do we think we should draft? If Ashton Genty is not there, maybe Caleb Johnson. Caleb Johnson reminds me of David Montgomery. The guy had some insane yards per carry last year, despite facing boxes with 8 defenders. So I love the ability to, I think that's kind of what George Payton was going after with Javonte Williams. I just think the injury really killed that. So I think Caleb Johnson would be a very good pick. Will he fall all the way to 51? Time will tell. But if he's there, I'm not opposed to it. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us on today's live show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe if you have not already, and I'll see everyone tomorrow.